Milton on here.
That's sweet. Like
Come
old
on,
home.
buddy.
Hello, Joan.
And then we'll-
Where's Uncle Milty?
Underneath you on my screen.
I don't see Uncle Milty.
I'll show you Uncle Milton.
Oh, there he is.
Where is he?
There he is. Hi,
There
Uncle Milty.
Here, I'm gonna spotlight Uncle.
No. Okay, here.
Oh,
There he is. Hey, Barbara.
There he is.
Barbara.
Yes.
Hi, Barbara.
anyone was
I saw you.
highlighting right now? Let's see. Susie's here, and so wow, it's
Barbara.
my screen here. Oh my goodness, too many people.
Aw.
Hi.
Mr. Ryback.
Actually,
That's
I'm
Mr. Ryback.
gonna start muting.
Give them
Yeah.
another minute.
Okay.
We'll get started a minute or two. Give everyone
Okay,
a chance to
keep-
log on.
Keep
Oh,
talking.
look at all the people on here. Wow.
Yeah.
You don't look any different.
Uncle Milton, you should tell my mom to do this.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
She's still shying away from it.
Barbara doesn't tell them.
I think.
What is this?
I'll call her.
Oh, I had him- that's
Turn it off.
And we want to give them.
Okay, fine. We still have people signing on. I'll be slow. I'll wait.
Let's wait a minute or two.
Fine. Harvey's here. Look at Harvey. Okay. Weinbergers.
I think it's still, it's.
Steve's fan club is here.
Oh,
Okay.
Ellen.
Very nice. Carol and John. Hi.
I think it is.
Very nice.
Your picture there. Hi, Bob. I'm gonna be.
I don't think Lois, I think, is on a cruise ship right now.
No, it's just the background.
Oh no, I don't. I think
You
you're
don't
on.
want to bring that up, do we?
I thought I'd put a pretty background on.
Very pretty.
Very savvy of you,
Hi,
Aunt
Mara.
Lois. Great.
Uh-huh. You kind of.
It's all right, here, I'll move this
It
over
works
here.
well when you-
No, Ellen.
Okay.
How's it going, Steve?
And you make me disappear.
Oh, I see me. Hello, Dick.
You can only handle one person.
I don't know.
If I sit back, I can't see.
All right, honey.
Hi.
Sybil, we saw your brother last night.
He likes to make me disappear.
I know.
Make me appear. Okay, let's get started. Come on.
Move over.
Okay. it's- do we-
Okay, now.
Okay, so I'm muting.
Now,
Okay,
yeah.
mute all. Here we go. You can, here we go. So everyone is muted. There's nothing wrong with your microphone or your speaker. Again, if you're new to, see a few people who have never used Zoom before. So if you're new to Zoom and you can see lots of faces, you're on gallery view. If you only see our face, then there you're on speaker view. What we'll do during this Zoom call is spotlight the person speaking. So if you are in speaker view, that's the person you'll see. So like when Mara's speaking, when Steven's speaking, we'll have them spotlighted. It also helps for live streaming purposes. If you have a question for one of our speakers or for us, you can use the chat. The chat is usually on the bottom of your screen if you have a computer. And by pressing chat, you can send a message to us. You can't send a message to everyone, just in case you want to say something bad. If you want to unmute yourself and you're new to Zoom, there is a way to unmute yourself. The Morning Minion experts know that if you hold down your space bar, when you hold down your space bar, that unmutes you. And then you let go of your space bar and you're back to muted. That's like a CB. So if you don't know how to chat, you might still be able to talk and we can hear you. We welcome you to Monday
Yes.
afternoons.
We are so happy you are here for First Mondays with Rabbis Amy and Alex. And this is a really special one because we are celebrating in Israel. They just started celebrating Yom HaZikaron, and it will go into Yom HaAtzmaut. I'm not going to explain too much about what those are because we have some experts with us. But we have two of our Beth Ellers, and it's kind of been like old home week as everyone has had a chance to say hello. And so we're going to start right into it with we have Mara, who grew up here, and Stephen, who grew up here. And we are going to start, and let's start. We'll start with Maura first.
Okay, let me get to her.
Okay,
we
go ahead
can
and
put the spotlight on her, and we
Okay.
can unmute her. And now, Mara, can we hear you?
Yes, you should be
Yes,
able to.
we can hear you.
All right.
And we
So-
can see you.
Yeah. So
And let's see, there was something. Oh, and you can rename yourselves. The one thing I'm allowing for security is you are allowed to rename yourselves. So make sure it's appropriate, not like my ninth graders. Okay.
So our first question for you is, when did you decide to make Aliyah, and why? It's kind of a two-parter for us.
Okay, well, we talked about this. I actually know I make Aliyah when I was in elementary school. I told you when I remember going, we still lived in Stanton Heights, and so we went to B'nai Israel, and I remember at Hebrew school, they said, Israel's the Jewish state. And I said, I'm Jewish, I should live there. And I'm sure I had no idea where that was. Or, I thought if it was a state in America or some other place, but it was obvious to me that's where I belong, which of course, as you can see, hasn't changed. And I always, joke with people, they say, why did you make Aliyah? And I always say, because in America, I had chutzpah, and here I'm polite. But it sounds like a joke, but it's actually the truth, because here I do blend in with everything else, and I have to actually yell to be heard here. Here people speak their mind, and it suits me very well. And there's a level of energy here that's different that also suits me very well.
It's like
Okay.
New Yorkers who speak Hebrew. So tell
Way
me,
behind them.
and how did your parents handle you? When did you tell them that you want to make Aliyah, and how did they handle it? I know.
Want to ask my dad?
Yeah, it's up to you. Should I ask your dad?
I don't know what he'll say.
Here,
Okay, here we go.
Jerry, this is your punishment. Okay, here it goes. Jerry, you're unmuted and we can see you.
I remember the time Sandy called me that the neighbor told her Mara was hiding behind the house instead of going to Hebrew school. And she came out and told her she hated her Israeli teachers.
Yep.
So go figure.
Go figure is right. Well, okay, Jerry,
Okay.
we're gonna take you off spotlight. You were a good sport about that. Okay, hey,
And let's go over to Stephen
Let's
for
go
a
to
minute
Stephen,
and ask
okay.
Stephen the same question.
Here we go. He
When
is
did you know, and
unmute
what made
and
you
spotlight.
want to make Aliyah?
Ah.
Hey there. And this is kind of your right?
Yeah, this is
It's also your second.
So I
kind of tell us about that.
Yeah, so before I did a year of college after I graduated high school in 2011, and then I took some time off and to figure out what I wanted to do in life, and I came over to Israel and enlisted as a volunteer in the IDF, and I served for a year and a half, and then I came back and finished school in the States. And it was about around the time of my junior year, I went to Virginia Military Institute, and the Jewish cadets were invited to what was called a Jewish Warrior Weekend at Texas A&M during Passover. And I was reminiscing about my time in the IDF with a bunch of other Jewish ROTC kids, and we spent the weekend just talking about what it's like to be Jewish during your service, and it just kind of reminded me of what it was like being in Israel. And so I decided that was when the seed was kind of planted that I wanted to go back, and I started planning, and I was trying to make Aliyah with the intention of re-enlisting. So I made Aliyah with a program called Garin Zabal, and it's an affiliate of the Israeli Scouts. And in the end, it didn't work out, but I made Aliyah with a group of college graduates who were also planning on drafting. But yeah, so that was when it really first started. And I remember I just kind of fell in love with the country during my Army service. And towards the end of my college education, I was feeling kind of homesick and I wanted to come back. And even though I didn't end up re-enlisting successfully, it's just kind of, it was where I knew I wanted to be.
What made you fall in love with it, Stephen? What made you know that this is where you wanted to live?
Some of the things that Mara touched on, the chutzpah, the Israelis they are straight shooters. They speak their mind. It's a very forward country, but it also has, it's like if people from Brooklyn had Southern hospitality. It's kind of, it's that indescribable. They'll tell you that you're stupid, but then invite you to Shabbat dinner. It's just that kind of unique characteristic that just made this country so special.
What do you miss about the States? Yeah, remember your parents are on.
I miss my family. That's the hardest part about being here, is that it means that I'm always 7 hours ahead of them, and that's probably the biggest draw to the States. Other than that, the second thing is probably food. I miss, there's not good pizza in Israel.
Leave Haifa.
Okay, let's go switch over to Mara first.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, Mara, what were you saying about
Haifa? On the pizza thing, though.
Where do you live, Mara?
I live in Ramat Gan, which is adjacent to Tel Aviv.
And they have better pizza than Haifa?
First of all, there's a great pizza in Haifa. He just doesn't know where it is.
I remember.
You're a vegan.
Oh my.
What are some of the challenges to living in Israel? I know that it's kind of a two-part question. I know that there are a number of people that try to make Aliyah and end up coming back to the States. So as a two-parter, and what do you think why do you think that is? And then for you, what are some of the challenges, if there are any, to living in Israel?
Yeah, I mean, I've been here in July. It'll be 26 years. So I've kind of forgotten what it's like not to live here. It's obviously there's I think a bigger economic challenge here than in the States. I think a lot of people who don't like it, I mentioned the energy before. I think people who don't like it here, that doesn't suit them. And the energy can be very positive, like the innovation that goes on here and people's love of going out and having fun, but also, what we were talking in the office the other day about, maybe this will make people respect your personal space a little more than having to keep this. So people, can push you and shove you, and a lot of people find that hard to deal with. And also that you do have to push your way to the front of the line and fight for your spot. I, was born with a personality that doesn't have that much problem with that. But for some people, that's very difficult.
Thank you.
Okay, well, so let's see. We hit Stephen with a couple of questions. So what are your? I guess you might have hit this already, but what's your best parts of living in Israel? You said the personality. Stephen misses the food. What does Israel have? Is it really the people, or do you have some other things that the best parts of Israel?
Well, I mean, we do have the Mediterranean, which is nice.
You like that?
And no, I do think there is a certain feeling here that you feel like, whether it's good or bad, you feel every day. And sometimes in the States, I think life's very comfortable and people kind of float along the surface and you don't necessarily feel things. And I think here, whether it's good things, the joy or the tension or the sadness, you feel it. Like, I will give the example of Memorial Day in the United States has become a day of picnics and sales. I've forgotten what it's about. That doesn't happen. Everyone is touched by it here. Everything is personal to everybody here. So I think that to me is what's special about here, along with the bad things that go with it.
Can you talk a little bit about, I know you and we talked a little bit beforehand about Yom HaZikaron and how you celebrated it with a friend and just how Israel celebrates it in general. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, this year is obviously different. They had the national ceremony with no audience. But for here, there's no one that, and Stephen will talk about this too, I'm sure. There's no one that doesn't know somebody that was killed in the army here. Nobody. I was telling you about my friend, a lot of people here probably knew Evelyn Solomonov, who lived in Pittsburgh for a long time, and her son David was killed in 2003. So while Evelyn was still alive, every Erev Yom HaZikaron, she would always go to the ceremony for Saba, and I would always come to her house with a few other friends afterwards to spend some time with her. So everything here, it's very personal. There's a government ceremony to commemorate it. Tomorrow, as you said, the siren goes off and everyone stands and everyone takes a moment. This year, it's a little different. Usually there are ceremonies in all the military cemeteries. They're not doing that because of, in fact, they locked the cemeteries.
Wow.
Gather there. But it's a very serious thing here. And the idea when the state was created, they said they wanted Yom HaZikaron to be attached to Yom Ha'atzmaut, so that people will remember the cost of having our country and what it was about. And I told you about how Evelyn had a group of families that were also all had lost someone in their family. And for them, that transition was very difficult. And so they would always spend the day, they had their own celebration together because they couldn't make that transition from the very sad to the happy. It was too close for them, and they couldn't make that within just from, during the day to the evening. But that's part of the reason here. So along with the difficulty of that juxtaposition, it always reminds us how we got here and what keeps us here.
Yeah. Thank you so
Okay.
much. And so Stephen, do you mind, will you kind of talk about the same thing that basically, so for everyone who, if you're not aware, as Marv was talking about, Israel and we as a Jewish people go from Yom HaZikaron, a day of remembering, to Yom HaAtzmaut, the day that we celebrate Israel becoming a nation. Can you talk a little bit about your feelings about Yom HaZikaron and kind of how it's observed and all that good stuff for us?
I very much agree with what Mara just said. I think it's a very tangible feeling. There's a sense of you can feel how solemn the country is today. That we have a siren this evening, and we have one tomorrow to mark the remembrance of the soldiers that fought and died for this country. And I think that's I think it's a beautiful thing that we transition from Memorial Day into Independence Day, because I think when celebrating, it's important to remember the cost of what that victory came with. Yes, we have a country, but it's a very new country, and the wounds are still very, very fresh. I know people who have died for this country, and it needs to be present on our minds that this is not something to be taken for granted when we're celebrating that we have a state.
Okay, I received a question via chat. So I'm going to start with you, Stephen, since you're up. So what are your jobs? How do you spend your spare time? And how often do you come back to the United States? The answer for your parents is probably not enough. But what are your jobs? How do you spend your time? And how often do you come back to the United States to visit? This is a question from the live studio audience.
Okay, I actually just finished up Hebrew Ulpan, a 5-month-long intensive Hebrew course that was 5 days a week, full class days. Whilst also I was working as a waiter until the pandemic started, and I got let go. After the pandemic ends, hopefully I'm looking into doing programming boot camp, and then hopefully getting a job in one of the various high-tech startups in the area. There's a lot of work to be had if you know how to program.
Very nice. I think we're gonna move over to Mara. Yeah, so spotlight's moving. And by the way, Stephen, I want to take all the credit for your programming ability from playing video games with you when you were 13. So that's I want to take the credit. So.
Well, so I actually switched jobs in the middle of all this craziness. I work in digital health. I'm part of the Startup Nation, as they talk about in Israel so much. I just started working at MindUp. It's a digital health incubator. It's an incubator that's under the program of the Israeli Innovation Authority. And I spent lots of time trying to convince Stephen to get involved in high tech. And it's pretty exciting because I think what's happened today, one of the good things is it's shown how much digital health is important.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to be working in that field.
How often do you come back to the States?
Well, my dad will tell you too often.
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, between work and personal, the last few years I've been coming probably at least 3 times a year.
Wow.
So, but we'll see. I don't know when. I was supposed to be there right now, actually.
Yeah. Sorry.
Let's talk a little bit about how Israel is handling the coronavirus. And I know before you were talking a little bit about what will go on about the closures for Yom Ha'atzmaut. Maybe you guys can talk a little bit about how normally Yom Ha'atzmaut is celebrated and, you know, what will happen because of the virus.
Well, normally here, the meat eaters here like to go out and barbecue everywhere on every piece of grass that's available. You'll see someone with the grill fanning it with a paper plate. And one of the things that we won't have is usually in Yom Ha'atzmaut, there's the Air Force does an air show over at the shoreline. And they go to various points along the shore and you can go and watch the air show, like, you know, it's air formation. So I guess we won't be doing that. So normally people have picnics and they have parties and everyone is out and doing something. And actually, in my mind, that's the best day to be in the center of Tel Aviv because it's nice and quiet. And yes, so they're afraid that everyone will congregate in large groups, so they've put us on lockdown.
Wow. And Stephen, have you been there yet for Yom Ha'atzmaut? How long have you been there?
Yeah. Last year I was when I came to Israel, when I made Aliyah, I was on a kibbutz for the first 6 months. So I did Yom Ha'atzmaut on a kibbutz, and it was a huge kibbutz-wide party. Everybody was doing cookouts. I was still eating meat at that point. I'm a vegetarian now, but lots of meat was had. Like provided by the kibbutz catered everything. There was food and drink. They put on a show where all the kids in the kibbutz, like of each grade, did like performances. There was musical performances. Kibbutz bands played, danced, and it was just very powerful, and to see both the nationalism and like the very kibbutz movement vibes tied together.
What was it like living on the kibbutz? Was that something you really liked that you think you might go back to at some point, or not really for you?
I loved it. I was on Kibbutz Afikim, which is right off of the Kinneret. So it was sunny, and it was raining. Everything turned green, and there were fruit trees everywhere, and dogs running around, and children, and just families walking around. Everybody walks around barefoot, and it's truly Gan Eden. It's paradise. I would love to go. That's where I want to settle down.
Tell them about your dog.
I can't.
Muted. Here.
How are we unmuted?
Okay, Stephen, I'll hit you with one and then I'll move it back to Mara. So You
Yeah.
may not know this because you're living in Israel, but people in the United States can get very political, and choose sides and have strong opinions about their president. Do you find the same thing in Israel? We only know what we see on CNN or Fox News, God forbid. But what is it like in Israel politically? Do people get involved as much as we see it here? Comparing it like the strong views about their. We saw this protest yesterday or 2 days ago for Netanyahu. Is that prevalent, or is it more you live your lives? What is it like politically there?
I think people are very Israelis just in general are very outspoken. I think one of the bigger differences here is that you can hate an idea and not hate the person who does it. So I've seen and been a part of debates where we were shouting at each other and completely could not find common ground. And but I think it's a lot of times in my experience, people have been able to separate the idea from the person. Whereas in the United States, I think there's a lot of demonization to say that if someone's a Democrat or a Republican, that's their identity, and that's at that point you can no longer find common ground with them. Here, I think people are people first, and then their political views are not what comprises their entire identities.
Wow. You didn't know
So I
that.
think politics are very strong, but
you didn't know that question was coming, but boy, that was a good answer. Yeah. Okay, here we go. You won the prize of me going to Mara. Okay.
Well, I promised Rabbi Amy I would not go off on my BB rant. So. Although Stephen and I are
you can go on in. I don't like
on WhatsApp. Yeah, people look. I think at this point everyone is tired and disgusted. The government here has shown, this whole thing with having so many elections and everyone's unwilling to compromise. And I'm starting the rant. So
sorry, that was my fault.
I feel quite disgusted. I think we should have gotten rid of them all after the second election started over.
Okay. Let me ask you, we'll take it away from the politics. No. But it is interesting. And I thought especially how you can, it's a good example for us of how you can not like somebody's views and still like them as a person and know that that's not all who they are. I think that's a great lesson for us all to take away. I want to talk about being Jewish in Israel and being Jewish and being religious and all that stuff. I know that when we lived in Israel, it's very different. And so I was wondering if you could kind of speak to that, coming from Bethel, like what is I know that it may be very tied together, your Jewish life and your religious life and your secular life, but can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, certainly here, first of all, the days I have off of work are the Jewish holidays. So it's part of your life. And everyone here says Shabbat Shalom to each other, even if you're not religious. But there is a divide here between the Orthodox and the non, as also shown by the the Haredi community's response to observing the rules about this whole Corona thing. Also highlighted that. So there is a certain divide here and a certain kind of, you have to pick a side almost, which doesn't exist as much in America. But for me, I came here because it is part of the fabric of life and you don't have to think about it so much anymore. And it is part of the cycle of my life, runs around the cycle of that because those are our holidays and those are the days we celebrate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Stephen, can we ask you the same question if you don't mind?
Yep. Something that I speak quite a lot about as a conservative Jew and someone who converted to conservative Judaism here. I find that as a byproduct of the religious climate of this country is I was very pushed towards secular ideals. Just I would love means to practice here in a way that fits my beliefs, but it doesn't really, it's not present. And I'm very outspoken among my friend group in my criticism of the Rabbanut and their practices and policies and how I think it alienates a lot of people. The fact that I can't get married here, or Rabbi Alex or Rabbi Amy would not be able to perform weddings here, I think is offensive. And I think I've compared it to my friend born Jewish under the definition of the Rabbanut, and who don't have a problem with this system. I've compared it to sort of having white privilege. I'm like, this is something that you don't have to worry about. They developed, there's a level of complacency among the traditional Jews who practice the Masorti practice, which is more similar to conservative Judaism, who are not affected by the tyrannical control that the Rabbanut has on the government. And so I think, corrupt. I was a volunteer at a nonprofit restaurant that had a Tudat Kashrut that I know for a fact was not kosher. It's a Jewish mafia, and I think it's one of the problems that need to be tackled as Judaism progresses into a modern world, where if we want to either be all secular or all Haredi, like that's not the solution I'm hoping for. I think that we need to make room for a middle ground.
Very good. And boy, Rabbi Amy, that was a little political. So here we go, Rabbi Amy, on religion in Israel. That's worse politics. Okay.
That
so
is true.
We put back Mara on the spot.
Unfortunately, the problem is it's part of politics.
It is.
Yes,
It is.
Amen.
Okay. So my question is, do you feel? I mean, this. We're Americans, right? We watch CNN and news, and do you feel safe in Israel, internally and externally? Like, do you walk down the street worried about getting stabbed? Do you worry? Do you still worry about packages on your buses? And do you worry about Iran and about the your neighbors as well? Like, do you feel safe in Israel?
I feel scared when I have to be in a car, because more people are killed here in car accidents than anything else.
Okay.
That's when I feel scared. And I'm not joking. I'm actually serious. That's the fact that everyone ignores, that there are many more car accidents and many more fatalities from car accidents here than anything else. And people are terrible drivers. So that's when I feel scared. I feel much safer personally walking down the street from street crime than I do in America, for sure. And I'm sorry to say, my mother used to always say, when will they stop having terror attacks there? And I kept saying, I'm sorry, I think it will become the norm everywhere else. And I'm very sorry that I was right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, I'm moving it back to Stephen here. We're going to give you the safe question. By the way, we lived in Israel like 28 years ago. I was driving down the freeway and two Egged buses, those are that's the bus system, were racing. One passed me on the left, the other one passed me on the right shoulder off of the freeway, and I'm in this little car, and they went around me like that, and I was sure I was dead. Okay, so driving in Israel, God bless you. Stay far away. Steve, do you feel safe in Israel?
I'm 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, which is above average height here. So yes, I feel very safe. But honestly, I've never felt that I was in danger. I've been in the West Bank guarding settlements, and that was the closest I've been to feeling uneasy. Which it felt different, but in what I consider Israel proper, I've never felt that I was in any danger because there are 18-year-olds walking around with M16s whose job it is to intervene if something happens, and there's checkpoints and security cameras and patrols. It's, I think, one of the safer places to be.
So for our last question for you all, and then we're going to go to just a very brief service of, commemorating Yom HaZikaron together for just a few moments. If you could just kind of wrap up, if there's anything that we didn't ask you that you want to tell us about living in Israel for a moment, or kind of your hopes for living in Israel, like, what your hopes are as you for the next kind of 10 years in just 2 minutes. Want to start with Stephen?
Steve, we're starting with you. We have to kind of switch off, for
You got any last thoughts on Israel for us?
I think Israel is an amazing country, and I came here because it very much is a Jewish homeland, and I identify as a Jewish person. And I think it's important to have a place that anybody who is Jewish can go to, and so that's something that's worth defending. I also think that Israel wants to make a life here, but also to work towards making it a country that I feel is more accepting to people like me, and to anyone that is seeking to make a life here. I hope that I can, my plan for the next 10 years is to hopefully get a job, maybe go to grad school, start a family, and settle down.
Amen. Thank you
Thumbs
so
up.
much. All right. Thank you. And thank you guys so much for being with us. This is incredible. Mara?
Well, I do hope to see a leadership in this country that cares more about what happens to the people and building it up than their own interests, for sure. And I'll keep trying to vote for someone else. But I do think that there is a lot of potential here, but we have to be sure that we realize it. And I'm certainly doing my best to do that too. So.
Thank you so much. And we thought that just like Mara and Stephen mentioned, there was a siren tonight in Israel at 8:00, and there will be one again tomorrow at 11. And we thought that a way that we could kind of honor Israel together is by blowing the shofar and having a moment. So it may be loud. So
yes. Well, the kids are probably sleeping, so it's okay.
please join us in Hatikva. Oh, Baleva Penima Nefesh Homia Adet Mizra Kadima Ayon Sophia O love the tikvatenu, hatikva b'shnot alpayim, liotam chofshi be'artzenu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. Liotam chofshi be'artzenu, Eretz Zion Yerushalayim. So we are going to unmute you all and put you onto gallery view. And we are going to say thank you so much to Stephen and Tamara for being with us. This has been awesome. And thank you so much. And we'll unmute you so you can say hello to each other.
I went today.
Okay,
Now,
very
I'm not gonna have 3, but
So we
Conversations.
Organized chaos.
No,
Thank you.
Not so organized.
Aw.
For joining us.
should I go in next week
Thank
rather
you,
than wait?
Stephen and Mara. Mara,
Tomorrow, when you
Stephen.
went home, Tomorrow, when you went home, did you have to quarantine in your
Okay.
own place for 2 weeks?
Okay,
I had
I
to stay in
will.
my house for 2 weeks,
Bye.
not go out.
It got made, you know, because later they started putting people up in hotels, correct?
Thank God I didn't have to do that, no.
Okay.
I got back here on March 12th, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
I didn't have to go to one of those hotels.
He was the substitute in my high school for, wow.
Is it over? Sort of.
All right, well, I'm signing out. See y'all.
Bye, Loco.
Yeah, I guess.
Thanks, Mara.
People in Israel.
Okay, people, thank you. Have a great day. Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut back to back.
Stay
Great
well.
job, Rachel. Great job, Mara. Yasher Koch, rabbis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining.
Shalom.
Hi.
Shalom.